I don't know which works I brought my sketchbook also, so I have different things to talk about.
Great. Welcome, everyone, to the Behind the Art Inspiration podcast, a sneak peek into the studio practices of all types of artists, conversations for artists and fans of art who are sophisticated and savvy. I'm your host, Caroline Karp. Let's get to it. Well, hello, everyone. This is episode number 22 of the Behind the Art Inspiration podcast. And in this episode, I'll be virtually traveling from my Safety Harbor, Florida studio north to Chicago and into the garage studio of visual artist Ellen Holtzblatt. And I'm going to ask you to spell that. Yeah. Ellen's work is fueled by the exploration of the connection between the physical and spiritual. The memories of the body that reside in the soul, in which landscape becomes an allegory for psyche and emotion, evolution and decay. So we're going to start off with Ellen telling us a little bit more about that.
Well, I talked in that opening about landscape, and I do a lot of landscapes. I also do figurative work, but I started doing landscapes maybe about 7 years ago. And it came out of a very personal place for me. I had a memory of a place that I had been to in Scotland over 30 years ago called the Orkney Islands. Oh, wow. And it was a very meaningful location to me. And I went there with my husband. We went twice. There was just a lot of such a sense of the history and being the raw landscape. It was very beautiful, very wild. And I still haven't been back there, which is crazy. I've been doing other traveling, but I haven't been back there, I'm not sure exactly what that's about. But when I was going through some personal things in my own life and thinking about connections to the rest of the world, to the earth, and wanting to put myself out there more, that's where I kind of went back to. And it started with a self-portrait, which I don't have it here with me, but I was looking out the window in my Chicago city backyard, and I changed it to Orkney. And then I started wanting to be in the landscape, so that, and that becomes an allegory for, how do I live in the world? And I choose landscapes that I'm not just places that are beautiful. Obviously, I find them beautiful, but there are many different definitions of what beauty is. But something that touches me, that evokes some kind of emotional response. And that's kind of what I'm always seeking.
Yeah, I noticed your earthy colors, and I lived in Colorado for 10 years. And so as you're talking about that, I can find myself driving, not looking at the mountains, but actually looking at the place that's the other side, right? The other direction of the kind of the tumbleweeds and the wheat that is, it might not even be wheat, whatever grasses they have growing that are that ochre color, and just the raw landscape.
Right.
That's what I feel like you're talking about.
Exactly. And looking for the rawness, the gestures of the landscape, the lines. The other thing that's wonderful about landscapes is they're inherently abstract. So even though I'm working from observation, you can really just lose yourself in all the formal elements and not think I'm going to make something that looks like something else. I always try to get that out of my head. I'm not drawing a person. I'm not painting a tree. I'm painting what I see in front of me with, and moving the preconceived notions of what that thing is out of the way.
And, I can see the gestural, I love that word, gestural, those qualities in your ink drawings. So I was actually watching you working on your Instagram channel. I think maybe it was a reel, and you were working with pen and ink.
Right.
And that was what I really loved watching, was your pen and ink work, also doing landscapes, correct?
Yeah, I actually have that piece right here.
I'd love to see it.
I'll show it to you. It's going to be a little hard to see because it's kind of big, so you might just see pieces of it.
Right.
It's kind of just a long piece. It's called Tree Graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have some things I've done in my sketchbook that relate to it. For the past several years, I've been in the places that I go to, because I tend to try to find, I love being outdoors, and I go on hikes, and I have been really paying attention to when you go into forest, seeing all the dead trees or the trees that have been knocked down.
Yes.
And I love that the kind of, when you talk about the gesture of the horizontal lines with the vertical lines, and I started calling them tree graveyards.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm starting to work a little bit with the imagery that I have from that. And that was one of the drawings that I did from that as well. And as you can see, it becomes very abstract. You really don't necessarily have something visual that you can connect to and say that this is what this is. It could be,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also be just, more abstraction. But it's about the movement.
Right. And I'm going to bring it back to me for a minute. So I was on a walk yesterday. So I live by the water, and we have weather that happens. And we were walking just along a path where beyond was a bunch of mangroves. Have you ever seen mangroves?
No.
So you might be fascinated by mangroves. Mangroves protect the coastline, and they're all grown all together, and their lines cross, and I've painted them quite a bit. But what was also happening was, if you could picture like a palm tree, but the kind of palm trees that have the sticks that come out like that make that lattice work. And
Right.
Those had broken off. And along the path, it was just like, it almost looked like a beaver had sat there and put all the broken pieces off the trees as lattice work on the ground. And then beyond it, Alan just says, let's go see the mangroves. Yeah, let's go see them. We can't, though, maybe in another episode. But it's really neat how I think you would be fascinated by just the way that the pieces had fallen together. And actually the mangroves, that's what they're doing. They're just crossing over, and they filter the water.
Right.
So the stuff that's on the land doesn't get past the mangroves.
I would love to see a photograph of this. Could you, when this is over, if you would send me. But I know what you're talking about. We were in Japan, and I remember when we were walking through, one of the things I photographed a lot were roots of trees. So we were in Kyoto, and we were going through all the beautiful gardens and the temples. Mm-hmm. And the tree roots were just incredible, and they formed all these patterns, and they were almost as, at least as beautiful as the rest of the garden.
Yeah, I've painted the mangroves. I think I've sold every one that I've painted. So I don't have one here to show. Well,
congratulations on having good sales.
Thanks. Now, I really love what I see behind you. And I love seeing the tools that artists work with. So do you have any of that you can show?
Yes. Would you like to see? Now, when you say what I have behind me, you're talking about the painting that I'm working on right now that's in process?
Yes. And also the palette right beside it. Okay. So you can type your computer if you want.
Can you want me to move the computer then?
Okay. Sure, let's try it.
It will be easier.
And then I can see your space too, because actually your space is kind of fascinating too.
So this is, here, first I'll show you, well, let's see if I can do this in a way that it's always challenging. This is currently a painting that I'm working on that is 4 feet high by 3 feet wide. Mm-hmm. As you can see, I've only really just begun it, but it's a painting of my mother. I've been doing a series of paintings. Let's see if I can figure this out. I've been doing a series of paintings about my mother. During the pandemic, she's been living with me part-time.
Oh, I see.
And she's 97. So several of the paintings that I have in my studio are that. And I've been photographing her without her knowing it. So I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast, but she thinks I'm just on my phone, texting, and I'm actually photographing her. But she had this beautiful gesture. She was leaning over to the side, and there was just this intense look on her face. And in the original painting, she's holding my dog. And I think that some of the intensity came from that physical contact with being able to connect with my dog. And during the pandemic, during parts of it, I would visit her, but I couldn't touch her. We were being extremely careful. When she was living with my sister, she's living with my sister right now. But I think that there's such a need for that physical contact. So anyway,
Yeah.
I was just trying to capture that gesture of my mother. And the other element was that she's always been a rather controlled person. And during the pandemic, she hasn't had her hair cut, and her hair used to be very, very short. She was very precise about how it had to be. And suddenly she has this long kind of wild hair and the
Yeah.
curls. And I've been loving working with that kind of movement of her hair. So that's sort of what's happening here. Now, this is my very messy palette. As you see, I have been working, so I did not have a chance to clean it up. So you are looking at it in its full glory and beauty as I
Yeah.
am working. Nothing is cleaned up. It's a mess, but I really need a large palette. I tend to spread out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my tabaret. I've had this desk since I was in high school. And we ended up putting a bottom shelf and putting some wheels on it. But that is what I use as my tabaret in my studio.
Now, when you say tabaret, not everybody's going to know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. A tabaret, excuse me, is a table that can move, that has wheels on it, that artists tend to use and put their palettes on and keep supplies on.
I have a tabaret right beside me.
Ah, yes, it's very, very important. Yeah,
there you go. That's my
beautiful
tabaret.
Now, I don't know if there's anything as long as I'm moving, if you wanted to see any of the other work that I have.
I think I saw something with a bird on the other wall. Oh, look at that.
This is here's another painting of my mother.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
This is one, let's see if I can get that a little bit better in the screen.
Mm-hmm.
This one is called My Beloved. Obviously, she didn't have a pelican actually flying over her head, and she wasn't sitting by the water. She has trouble sitting, so that would not be a place that she would be. But I tend to take her, and put her into places that are more that I, connect to emotionally. And there's a sense of, as someone gets older, the isolation that they start to feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about my mother. It's also about mortality, about isolation, which is something that we've really been dealing with a lot in the last year or so, even more so than what an artist typically feels isolated in your studio. But
I love the shape of the verticality of that canvas and the one right next to it.
Oh yeah, the small painting of her.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow.
And then this, just in general, so you could just see where my space is. I am in a converted garage. I think that considering that this is actually a 2-car garage, we've done a pretty good job. The only thing that's garage-like in the corner, we do have bicycles and a storage shed.
Right.
The rest of it is all for me and my space. Mm-hmm. And I have it divided into different sections. So I have a table in the middle where I do my ink work and my paperwork, things that I don't want to get full of oil paint. And then I have my painting section. I have my desk where I do some work.
Mm-hmm. And, I think I read on your Instagram also that you have a show coming up.
I have a show that I just went to. We had an actual in-person opening yesterday. I have a 2-person show at a small gallery on Damon Street in Chicago. It's called Studio O. It's a really nice show. I'm showing with another artist named Kathy Weaver. And our work is very different, but I think it's a nice juxtaposition of the different works. Mm-hmm. And then I also have another 2-person show coming up in May. It opens on May 7th. And that's at a place called the Chicago Artists Coalition. I've had a residency there. It started before the pandemic, and then it was supposed to end last year, but it's been extended because we lost a lot of time during the pandemic. But so.
That's great. Is there anything else you want to tell us or tell our audience before?
About?
Anything. Your style?
I just would say that I feel like that it's really one of the most important things to me as an artist is being authentic and not doing things just to please other people, and making sure you get into a mindset and you really have to kind of force out all the external aspects, because there's all the marketing things and all those aspects of art as well. But, you really, ultimately, you have to come back to why are you making art in the first place? And I make art as a way, it's what I know. It's what I know how to do. And the only subject that I know well is myself. So I work with that, and I hope that then it connects to other people as well. If I can be authentic, that's all I can offer.
Have you been an artist a long time, or is this new for you?
I've been an artist my entire life.
Yeah, I have too.
When I was a kid, I was just constantly drawing. I used to get in trouble at school because I was always drawing on my papers and my homework and my tests. I had teachers who would embarrass me by taking my things and then putting them on the board because I thought they were very private.
Right.
So it's just been something. Yes. So you can connect to that.
Yes, I can. Okay. Well, don't go anywhere. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone.
Okay. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I want to thank everybody for joining us, and for our live person today who's watching us, Alan. Thank you so much for listening and watching as we share. In March of 2020, I had a vision of starting the International Online Art Collective, which is a diverse group of artists from around the world who value the power of art to inspire, provoke, and heal. The power of this group is in connection. And from this podcast was born, first interviewing the artists of the IOAC, and then branching out to all types of artists like Ellen. Being a facilitator of conversation, for each artist, I pose an open-ended question, which is just send me a one-sentence blurb about you and what you do. And from that, the conversation flows. So thank you again, everyone. And I'm going to thank you, Alan. I'm going to end the broadcast. So goodbye.